Hey everyone, Blayst back with another exciting video. I wanted to do a video that described how I DPS the bosses in Karazhan, as well as sharing a couple tips that may help you in your raids. Pumping in Karazhan is a lot of fun, but there are some fights where you need to be a little bit more utility, and some fights where you will be able to go full send. I want to emphasize before each boss fight that knowing when you are going to get Bloodlust or Heroism is absolutely key for your pump. I also want to have a disclaimer on this video. I have been wanting to make a Karazhan RET boss video guide for a while, but have been unlucky with my Opera Hall RNG. I have only had Crone in the last 3 weeks, and once I get Romeo and Juliet, or a big bad wolf kill, I will upload those videos individually and talk about them. With that said, let's dive into the bosses now. Attumen has two phases. Phase 1 where you fight Attumen as well as his horse. You will blow up the horse and phase 2 will commence, placing Attumen on his horse. This is a fairly straightforward fight with an emphasis of standing behind your target. Make sure that your tanks are getting dispelled from Attumen's curse. It reduces your chance to hit by 50%. If you are getting dispelled and your tank is not, you might pull threat. As always, make sure you know if your Bloodlust or Heroism is being used in Phase 1 or 2 so that you can time your Avenging Wrath DPS cooldown to pair with it. Also, make sure you reapply your Judgment during Phase 2. Depending on how your guild does Moroes, there can be a slight difference in play. For my guild and guilds who zerg High King Malgar, Moroes is similar in that regard. If you blow up Moroes, the parse ends. Here, we blow up Moroes and AoE down the adds. Note that if you have sappers, using them with wings here during the initial burst is a great source of DPS. If your guild does not blow up Moroes, Judgment of Wisdom is recommended. Make sure that you watch the adds carefully and be ready to stun any of them. Keep an eye out for Whirlwind AoE. When Moroes vanishes and garrotes someone, you can use Blessing of Protection on them. You can also use Divine Shield on yourself. Maiden is a touchy fight for RET. It is nearly impossible to seal twist. You will apply the judgment that fits your raid, Crusader if it dies in a minute or less, Wisdom if it does not. During this fight, you will attempt to keep up Seal of Blood and Crusader Strike or Judgment as much as you can. In your downtime, you are able to use a Consecration. If the fight lasts longer than a minute, consider helping your healers dispel Holy Fire to reduce the raid damage. The Crone is a fight with two phases. First phase involves Dorothy and her companions. Generally, you will blow up Dorothy and roar, while Tin Head rusts over time and can be kited. Some guilds will be able to tank all three, while Strawman is burned with a fire spell and he is dazed for the whole fight. If your guild has great DPS, I recommend using your cooldowns on Phase 1. Phase 2 happens too quickly for high DPS raids and you get more use out of blowing up Dorothy and her companions. For phase 2, make sure you stay out of the tornadoes and blow up the Crone. If you still have DPS cooldowns here, use them. Curator is another boss that varies based on the guild or raid that you are in. Here we pop Bloodlust and blow up the boss. I am lucky enough to not be on spark duty. Make sure that if you are, you kill the sparks as soon as possible. If your guild doesn't kill Curator or push him to 15% before evocation, make sure that you judge accordingly to your kill times. Also, please note that you should save your DPS cooldowns for evocation. Curator takes 200% increased damage during this time and scales incredibly with your Avenging Wrath DPS cooldown. If your Karas are seeing evocations, saving your cooldowns will see the largest increase in DPS. Illhoof is a demon boss that allows for Elixir of Demon Slaying. When the fight starts, judge Illhoof according to your kill times and focus kill rec. Do not pop your cooldowns on kill rec. Blowing up kill rec does two things for you. It gives you a chance to stack your vengeance up before attacking Illhoof, and after kill rec dies, it applies a 25% damage debuff to Illhoof himself. After Killrek dies, you have 45 seconds to blow up Illhoof, or Killrek respawns. Pop your Heroism or Bloodlust when Killrek dies, as well as your DPS cooldowns, and go ham. You can produce a lot of damage on this fight. If chains are spawned on a player who cannot get out of it themselves, make sure that you swap to the chains. A DPS that can't DPS the boss will result in a slower kill time and lower overall DPS. Aran can be a tricky fight for some raids as the mechanics are a little unforgiving. There are two ways that you can do this fight. If you have the DPS to Bloodlust or Heroism and blow up Aran, you should do that. If you do not have the DPS to blow up Aran, I would recommend using Bloodlust or Heroism on the Elementals. Here, we disregard the Elementals and blow the boss up. Make sure that you are dispelling slows when he applies it to everyone and walking out. If the Elementals are giving your ranged or healers trouble, you can taunt or stun them to give them damage relief. Lastly, make sure you move from Blizzard and do not move during Flame Wreath. Netherspite is also a fight that has a different tactics for different raids. Here we blow up Netherspite and utilize the blue beam for our Pumper Mage. All I'm focusing on here is DPS and keeping up Crusader. If your guild needs 2 or 3 phase Netherspite, you can actually tank the boss with just a shield on in your RET spec. However, you need to dance the red beam appropriately, 5 stacks in, and let it fall off the boss. Blue beam can also increase your damage to the target, however, it is generally better for the casters. Prince is a fight that gets talked about a lot with RETs. Specifically the old, how do I not die to enfeeble? Well, you can get lucky like me here and just not get enfeebled, or make sure that you are watching DBM. When enfeeble is about to go out, notice how I swap to seal a command and just wait for the enfeeble. That way, I don't auto-attack the boss with Seal of Blood up right when he enfeebles. Once I realize that I'm not down to 1 HP, I twist into Seal of Blood and continue my normal rotation. If your healers are having difficulty with keeping the tank up, help them out and dispel Shadow Word Pain off of the tank or other targets. The biggest thing to note on this fight is enfeeble and watching the DBM timer. If you do not get enfeeble, you can also swing to the front of the boss really quickly during Nova so you don't get knocked extremely far. Nightbane is a utility fight for RET in my opinion. You are unable to pump the adds during the air phase perfectly, and a lot of your mana is useful for dispelling. I recommend using Judgment of Wisdom for the entire fight. However, I judge Crusader on the first phase of my raid because we use Bloodlust. If your raid is having trouble with adds, try using Bloodlust or Heroism during the add phase. The ground phase is a straightforward DPS rotation until getting ready to stack up. After you stack up when the air phase commences, the adds will start spawning. I like to attempt to blow one up while stunning another as they spawn. Once they all do spawn, you take a lot of damage from the AoE and should try to pick your battles very carefully. Try to kill the outside add or just stand back and move to dispelling. During the air phase, your healers are likely to have threat and take a decent amount of damage, so dispelling them or others is extremely helpful to them as they do not need to use a global cooldown to dispel. This fight involves conserving your mana as well as the others and keeping your raid alive through dispels. I would not recommend trying to DPS heavily on this fight unless you have 2 other non-healer dispellers in the raid. As always, everyone, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. I will be adding a mag and Gruul's guide, as well as the upcoming Romeo and Juliet and Big Bad Wolf kills in the near future. If you need to contact me or want to discuss RET, you can stop by the Light Club Discord or come talk shop while I'm streaming on Twitch.